Hey guys, it's Rena. Thanks for tuning into my channel. Today I wanted to talk about a pretty new palette actually from Anastasia Beverly Hills Cosmetics. What makes me really excited about this palette is that it is actually permanent. If you've been following, the makeup community, makeup industry lately, everything's been limited edition, super limited quantities, super hyped, and it's all seemed to be kind of like a marketing ploy. Almost every brand has been doing it. Urban Decay, Jeffree Star, Tarte, Too Faced especially with the Sweet Peach palette. So it was actually really refreshing to find out that the newest palette from Anastasia, which is the Modern Renaissance palette, is actually a permanent item. It's really sad that that's refreshing to me and that it's exciting, but yeah, it's exciting that you don't have to rush out and get this right away. You can wait for a Sephora VIB sale or an Ulta sale or something. I just really wanted it for summer, and I really wanted a good travel palette, and this is really going to do me some good with my European trip this summer. So I'm excited to share it with you guys. I've really been enjoying it. I've had it about a week now, so I really can give you guys my thoughts and opinions. I've used it about 4 times on the eyes, so I have experience in how it wears, how long it wears, how they work wet and dry, and I really can't wait to tell you guys about it. So yeah, it is a $42 palette, which seems like a little bit much for an Anastasia palette. However, each shadow is 0.7 grams or 0.02 ounces, and there are 14 eyeshadows. In comparison to normal Anastasia palettes, there are more eyeshadows and more product per pan. But again, that is reflected in the price tag since it is $42. The outer packaging is velvet, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. It reminds me a lot of the original Urban Decay Naked palette, which had brown velvet. It got dirty almost immediately, so it was really disappointing. And I'm really worried about this because if the brown got messed up, I'm not too optimistic about lilac. But we'll see. I mean, mine has already gotten a little bit dirty, as you can see on the sides. I'm not quite sure how to clean it. We'll figure it out, I guess. If that's a deal breaker for you, this might not be a good palette. I've been keeping it in the box when I'm not using it, so that's helped a little bit. But honestly, I think the contents inside are what really matters, and that, in my opinion, is stellar. The back of the palette has all the ingredients, the information about it being cruelty-free, where it's distributed, and the amount of eyeshadow per pan. I love it when palettes have this on the back. I think it's fabulous. My only concern is that it is a sticker, so it could peel away from the velvet, but so far I haven't had any issues. It actually feels pretty high quality for a sticker. So, again, it says Modern Renaissance, Anastasia Beverly Hills. And the inspiration for this palette was the palette of the Renaissance, the colors that painters used in their art, which hits close to home for me since I am such an art history nerd. I study art history. Even if I didn't want this palette, I think I would have bought it eventually just because of the names and the idea behind it. But I think the concept really comes together well in this palette, and it is such a cohesive palette. How many times can I say palette? It opens up and you have a lovely mirror, which I haven't taken the plastic off of yet, but it's very functional. The only thing is it doesn't stay up on its own as it does fold back, but that's okay. Again, 14 lovely shades. It's a very neutral palette, but you do get a couple pops of color. You have, this red, berry, an even more pink berry shade, an orange. So you get a lot of interesting colors that aren't maybe normally in a neutral palette. Because it's permanent, I think it's great that these shades really cater to almost every season. I've come up with looks that would have fit well in summer, spring, fall, winter. Like, honestly, there's a wide range in here that'll work for many different occasions. Most of them are matte, and for me, usually mattes, are a little bit dry. They are harder to blend on my eyelids, but these work really well, and they are super creamy and buttery. There are about 4 shimmers. Tempera is more of a satin. Vermeer and Primavera are very, very shimmery. And where's the last one? Antique Bronze is just more of a shimmery satin type of shade. It's not as glittery as these two. So I want to get into them. I'm going to be swatching on my other hand today because this hand is kind of suffering from eczema, so I don't really want to subject you guys to that. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and swatch them. They are very buttery smooth. Let's just get into it. First one is going to be Tempera. which it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to adjust using my other hand for swatches. But there it is. It's just a light beige shade, almost pink toned, and it barely has any shimmer to it. It's almost basically matte, and it applies lovely to the brow bone. It is just gorgeous, and it blends so well with other shades. Next one is Golden Ochre, and this is a mustard yellow. It's right there. Another matte shade. I haven't personally used this one yet, but I think it would be a great crease shade. Next one is right here, Vermeer. This is my favorite of the entire palette. I'm pretty predictable though. When it comes to neutrals, I'm a big fan of champagne, and that is a lovely pink champagne shade. I used that wet and dry, and it didn't need to be used wet, I should say that. It works wonderfully on its own. It's incredibly pigmented and creamy and blendable on its own. But wet, it just really intensified the shimmer, and it looked gorgeous. The next one is Buon Fresco, and this is a lovely matte shade, and it's kind of like a purpley taupe. It's the most gorgeous, gorgeous crease shade, and it goes so well with Vermeer. Like it's one of my favorite pairings from the entire palette. Next is Antique Bronze. This one is one of my least favorites. It is one of the shimmers, and it's just a really warm-toned reddish bronze. It's just not personally my cup of tea, but that doesn't mean it's not a good shade. I actually used it yesterday to put like some definition right here, and it worked wonderfully. It's just not something I'm going to reach for a lot. Next is Love Letter, which is one of my absolute favorites. It's so gorgeous. I couldn't believe how stunning this one was and how pigmented it was. There it is. So smooth, so pigmented, not patchy at all, and a lot of times raspberries and reds are patchy. This one is not, and it works so beautifully. I really loved to mix this one with Buon Fresco in my crease and just created a lovely blown out pink raspberry type of shade. It was stunning. And the last one for this row is Cypress Umber. Oh, this one's so pigmented. I can't believe it sometimes how pigmented these mattes are. It's that one right there. It's a deep, deep chocolatey brown, just gorgeous shade. Like, I couldn't believe how pigmented this was for being a matte. Haven't used this one on my eyelid, but it feels just like all the other mattes, so I assume it's going to blend really beautifully. Starting off the bottom row is Raw Sienna. This one is super pigmented, really buttery smooth. I feel like a broken record, but they really are that nice. It's kind of like the mustard shade I showed you earlier, Golden Ochre, but a little bit darker and more orange. I used this one in my crease yesterday, and it worked really, really well. It just created a nice amount of warm definition. And then there's Burnt Orange, which seems a little bit similar to Raw Sienna, but it's definitely more of a peachy apricot shade. You'll be able to see next to it the difference. Definitely more peach, a little brighter. Haven't used Burnt Orange yet. I'm not much of a brown orange fan. I like really bright, true oranges. So we'll see how I can use it, really. Primavera is one of my favorites. I used this yesterday with Raw Sienna, and this is really pretty. It's a good alternative to Vermeer. If you don't want a pink champagne, this is a nice warm version of it, kind of a golden champagne. Then we're getting into the two other reds, Red Ochre. This one was really lovely, blended into Raw Sienna, and it's kind of a reddish brown. Really pretty, really pigmented, worked really well. Venetian Red is one of my favorites. Of the three reds, this is the one that goes on a little patchier, but not by much. It's just a little more powdery than the other ones. It's if Red Ochre is a brown red and Love Letter is a raspberry, Venetian Red is the closest to a true red there is in the palette, but it's still slightly pink. Then we have Warm Taupe, which the name is very, very true. Pretty accurately named. There it is, just a nice warm taupe color. I wore this all over the lid and it looked beautiful. It really just gave me a nice finished look and I didn't have to even work at it. I love it when that happens. And the last one is Realgar, or Realgar. It's the one that I'll probably use the least, besides Antique Bronze. I just don't reach for these colors, but I'd love to find a way to use it in a look. It's a beautiful kind of terracotta orange. So overall, these shadows are super smooth, blendable, pigmented beyond belief, to be honest, for mattes. They are gorgeous quality, really feel nice, and they wear well on the lid. They wore on me for about 9 hours before fading or creasing, and for me that's about standard, pretty good, honestly, for the humidity that I live in. I really love the palette. I love the concept behind it. I think that Anastasia and Norvina really created a beautiful palette that makes sense. You know, sometimes we look at palettes that are coming out these days and it just seems like they picked random colors to put all together in a palette, you know, to get different types of people to buy it. But this palette really makes sense. It's cohesive and it is gorgeous for all different seasons. And I can't stress enough how happy I am that it's permanent. You know, we don't have to freak out about going out and getting it now. It's one of those things where, you know, yeah, there's going to be hype because it's a beautiful quality palette, but, you know, it's not something you have to stress out over. So, final thoughts. Really love it. Love the swatches. I think they just look beautiful. I've worn them so many times, and it is going to be the palette I take with me to Europe. That's how much I love it. I don't think I'll be bored of it, and normally I get bored of neutral palettes. Not this one. This one's going to be great. So, highly recommend it. As someone who normally likes cool toned eyeshadows, I still found things to love about this one. Yeah, if you like it, check it out, and please subscribe if you haven't already, and thank you for watching.